What is up, everybody? Look at those shining faces, permanent smiles. It's always a good sign. All right. Hey, appreciate being with you guys. We're going to have a good time today. You know, it's interesting. I've been looking at some stats. So people keep asking me every time I turn the corner, what is the market doing? Where is it heading? But just as a reminder, as I know more people are joining, but just as a reminder, we've got Summit next week at 11:30 at the Larry H. Miller Center on Tuesday. And then, of course, if you don't have it planned out, December 17th, you might want to put on your calendar. We've got the movie morning where we'll be watching a handful of movies over there at Jordan Commons that we do every single year, which I know a bunch of you have participated in that with your families or grandkids and children and whatnot. All right. So the big question, what is the market doing? And the thing that has been so interesting is I was on the phone with the #1 Century 21 company this morning in the world. And it's a dear friend of mine. We're in a mastermind together. He has over 2,000 agents, over 110 offices across the country. This guy is a monster. And I said, hey, what's your take on the market? And he said, well, first I want to hear yours and I'll give you my perspective. And he said, what is your take on? I said, what is your take on the market? And he said, well, I knew it was going to change. I just didn't know that it was going to change as fast as it did. And I think that's probably, and I said, well, amen to that. I said, that's probably a pretty fair statement. I said, the speed in which things have changed is pretty significant. Now, for some of you, it may not feel like it's changed at all, but I want to at least give you some market stats to say, okay, from a place of the market, it unquestionably has changed. Now, in relationship to your own business as an individual entrepreneur, CEO of your own business, the fact is it may not have changed at all. It may even be better. In fact, I'm seeing one of the great people on this call, Miss Jessica Terry. Her name was brought up today by Andrew Cuppett, who said, you know, there's a handful of people making a lot more money than they did last year. And Jessica, thank you for being on the call today. You're one of them. That He brought your name up and he said, Jessica is one of them. I said, I know. Some people haven't missed a beat. So the question is, what are those people doing, which we're going to get to, but let's still stay on this moment for what the market's doing. So from that standpoint, just I want you to look at the market. And, you know, we didn't get into much detail other than he just said it changed faster than he thought. But just a couple of thoughts in regards to the market. You know, a few years or a year ago, not even a year ago, I had the opportunity to go up and speak at the University of Utah. It was, when I say up to speak, I should say I didn't get up there because everything was still being done by Zoom. But I spoke to all of the MBA, current MBA program, and also to the alumni. And the dean of the school was there, and he had about 3 or 4 of us, one from the lending side of it, one from the real estate side of it, other different industries and whatnot, from healthcare to you name it. And the conversation was, gosh, what's really happening in this market? I mean, the market is white hot. It's incredible. Well, at that time I said, hey, look, this is my opinion. And I got a chance to speak for about 10 or 15 minutes. And I gave my spiel. And then I'll tell you what he said at the end. The dean, took over at the end of the class, if you would say, and said, hey, this is what I think also. But I went on to say, look, does natural disaster change the market? Well, if you look at what's happened even in Florida, or when the really bad hurricane happened down in Houston, weirdly, you'd think, well, that had to for sure mess up the real estate market. Strangely, it actually increased the market. It went up because of a supply shortage in housing. So natural disaster, ironically, doesn't typically change the market. Now, of course, you see different things. I still remember back when 9/11 hit and the first plane hit, and I had someone come tap on my shoulder and say, George, you need to come see this thing. And at that time, that morning, I was prospecting. And I remember I went into this little room and we're on this, the bunny ears are literally on this TV, and we're watching the Twin Tower that's been hit. And all of a sudden, I still remember that other plane coming, smashing live on TV, watching the second plane hit the World Trade Center. Well, at that point, of course, we know it wasn't an accident. It was nothing more than, or a tremendous, tragedy to humanity, which was terrorism. I remember when that happened in September. And September, of course, everyone was a little rough, but the deals that were under contract, some of them stayed, some of them didn't. And October was a little rough, but by basically October did that. And then basically by November, thing was rough. And then November was right back on track. So again, terrorism, from at least what I've seen as a general statement, doesn't seem to have a big impact. And then you start to say, well, wait, what about the interest rates? Will that change the market radically? And the answer is yes, but what you typically see is that when rates go up, people kind of go, whoa, they kind of shudder for a minute. There's maybe about 2 weeks to 4 weeks where people are a little nervous and they get a little scared and they get a little bit uncertain. And then all of a sudden things smooth out. And we saw that when the first big rate changes happened in the springtime, basically May, June. And then all of a sudden July was a little rough, August was a little rough, but by August things had gotten back to normal. In fact, I can just tell you from a company standpoint, because we have such a large footprint of transactions, I can tell you that August was basically not too far off from last August, because again, based on what the market was actually doing in relationship to the rates. And so now you look at another rate change, which I'm going to get to in just one moment. But you start looking at rates, mortgage programs, natural disaster, terrorism, and I listed all of these, a few other things, not to take time on those other things, but I listed them. And then I said, but the one thing that will start to change the market is going to be unemployment. And I said, if unemployment actually occurs at a sizable level, well, we're going to find the fact that the market's going to really shift. And after I was done saying my thing, doing my thing, the the dean of the school basically took over the class, and he was the main guy on the Zoom call. And he said, "I just want to point something out, that exactly what I said." That he goes, "That is exactly what I believe." He goes, "Nothing will change until unemployment or employment changes." Now, here's what's interesting, guys. In the last 30 days, let me give you just a perspective. In the last 30 days, or 45, let's say 45 days. In the last 45 days, there's been a significant rate change. Now, very seldom does the federal rate that was raised 3/4% immediately jump over in equality to the interest rates. Meaning, if they raise the federal rate by 3/4%, it doesn't always transition straight over to mortgage rates. Typically, if there was a 0.5 to a 3/4% change in the federal rate, it means there might be a 1/4% change in the mortgage rates. Well, that wasn't the case this last mortgage change. It wasn't it at all. And so the challenge is, in today's marketplace, you've got some really strange things happening, that it actually matched. They went down 3/4 or up 3/4%, and they actually went up 3/4% in the mortgage rates along with the Fed rate. That's very rare to happen at that level. Now, the question is, people keep asking, let's get to rates. People asking, are our rates going to continue to go up? Well, the answer is, I think that they will continue to go up. And I will tell you that the only reason they haven't gone up is because of the midterm elections that happen next Tuesday, which is in 8 days from now. The moment that happens, they believe that the first week of December or sooner, rates will go up another 0.5%. Now, I know that Fannie Mae has come out and said, no, things are going to settle out. No, not before they get a little more worse in the rates. You're going to see a 0.5% increase in December. You're going to see a 0.5% increase in February. And now you're going to hit a tipping point, is at least my opinion and everything I've studied. And I've been obsessed with this just because of the stewardship and responsibility I have, not only for so many employees and so many different people, but I want to make sure that I know what's going on. So our decisions are not big guesses, but they're anticipation, which is key to the business structure that we each have, and the way in which we run our business is anticipation. So April of this coming year, which is basically 6 months away, you'll probably start to see rates actually come down just a little bit. Now, of course, they typically kind of go up and then they kind of mark down just a little bit, which was the case because for a few days they were at 7%. As a general statement, rates have gone down to 6.75, 6 7/8 as a general statement. And if you haven't been, I hope that you're just on rates. I may not say this, I want to say this later. Let me say this, and that is, I hope that you're using 2-1 buy downs, 3-1 buy downs. I'm watching a lot of home prices come down. You know, I look at the fact of, are we using our tools that are available to us, right? We've got, you know, people will talk about Utah housing. I would tell you that I don't think Utah housing is the best solution today. There's programs like Chenoa. If you haven't gone and talked to a loan officer, 2-1 buy downs, 3-1 buy downs can really only be done by mortgage brokers, which is one of the things we converted Inspiro into being, which is a mortgage brokerage. So as a perspective, I would encourage you to make sure you really understand what programs are available for you to get people into homes. And when people are thinking of reducing their homes by $20,000, $30,000, before that reduction happens, go talk to them about buying down the interest rate for a period of time so that there's affordability for the people who are buying. And there's all these different tools that are available. So make sure that you're talking with, LO from Inspiro or whoever else you're talking to, but get down into finding the solutions to getting people into their homes so that they can either buy. And look, will there be a point of refinance? Of course there will. Will there be a point where their income goes up? Of course they will. Was there a point of their tax benefits of owning their own home or investments? Of course there is. So just get really, really clear on what's available to you from the lending standpoint. So the reason I bring up these market issues, and people always say, my goodness, George, you're talking about really serious changes. But here's what I will tell you with that market shift that just happened. If you haven't looked at your own numbers on a board level or across the Wasatch Front specifically, or if you haven't looked at the transactions, I can tell you from a company standpoint, just want to make sure you guys hear this, and that is, there is always a significant change in the market when you see the rates go up like they have and the speed in which they've gone up. Well, as I said, the guy told me, Dan Cruz, who's a dear friend of mine, said, man, I've never seen it happen as fast as it's happened. Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but in the month of October, transaction count literally cut itself in half, meaning that if there was 100 homes that were supposed to close in October, now 50 of them are closing. So you'd have to really, ignore the realities of what's going on and say that doesn't matter. And you could say, well, no, it matters. It matters on a collective level. But what's interesting is it should not matter to you on a personal level. And the reason it shouldn't matter is because of the main thing that I want to talk about. Great, we can talk about all these factors that are out of our control. Markets dropping by 50%, home prices down, rates down. People keep saying, I keep hearing such silliness of, just as a general rule as to whether or not the prices are going to go down. Guys, pricing has already gone down, number one. Number two, pricing will go down 5 to 10% per year during a recession/depression. And so for however long the recession lasts, which is probably going to be somewhere around 2 years that we're going to be dealing with this, note that prices will go down probably somewhere around 5% on average per year of a recession/depression. So the nonsense of saying prices aren't going to go down, even though there is, weirdly, a housing shortage, the reality is they're still going to go down, and we're already seeing that. And I see people posting stuff acting like it's la la land and things aren't changing. Things are changing. But if someone's selling a house and they're not making as much, also the home they're going to buy is also gone down and it's not going to cost as much. So it's an equal exchange. Yes, if someone's trying to sell a house at a high and then buy at the low, well, then, yeah, they have to buy it and then hold their money for a period of time and then hopefully at some point buy. Those are certainly strategies that I saw in 08 and 9 and it's possible. But I can say that don't be oblivious. Like, in so many words, don't make it worse than it is. Don't make it better than it is. Just call it as it is. That's what great leadership does, is they have an understanding of what the market's doing. They talk and speak intelligently about it, and then they take action to pivot and to do the things they need to do in the midst of it. So as I've often said for years, that there seems to be this epidemic in the world today, which is we will focus on all the things outside of us that we can't control. And look, the first 10 minutes of our conversation today has been rates, the programs, what's happening, everything outside of you, how many home sales or lack of home sales. All of these things are outside of you. But the question I would just ask you is, have you controlled the things you can control? And I want to point something out, that when 2019 was happening, just so you know, we're probably on track for the same amount of home sales as 2019. So if you did well in 2019, just ask yourself, what did you do in 2019? What did you do in your business in 2019? How did you function within your business in 2019? Well, what I know in 2019, we weren't around waiting for business. We weren't being given free money because of COVID. We weren't just, having people call us and hoping that business happens, and then saying things like, "Hey, you know what? I'm not really working. Business is just flowing to me." Instead of taking a step back and recognizing that you were on some of the most unprecedented times in history over the last 24 months in the game of real estate. Utah went up 47% in home value. I've been doing this for 30 years this coming next year. 30 years. That's never happened. And nor has it ever happened in the history of the United States in the last 24 months. So when you start realizing that, you may say, boy, just did I create and did you start some patterns in your life that are not in alignment with true business principles? And what I mean by that is, have you started, do you sleep in? Do you get up early? Is your work ethic where it needs to be? Are you prospecting like you should be? Are you taking care of your mindset, your belief systems like you should be? Are you role playing? Are you practicing? What are your presentations like? Who are you talking to every day? How are you engaging relationships with people? And when you start to realize that in the last 24 months, since 2019 specifically, all of a sudden COVID hits, people think it's the end of the world. All of a sudden it's not, and real estate goes on fire like never before in the history of the world. Well, with that being said, with the access to cash, access to capital, access to low interest rates, or basically zero interest rates, all of a sudden this machine just keeps going. So there's a lot of people who want to blame, oh my goodness, it's a Joe Biden issue. Is it? Who printed all the money? Right? It's not a Joe Biden issue. Donald Trump is the one who got all the money printed for you to save it then. But there has to be a reckoning at some point when all the free money was given, all the low interest rates given. Inflation at some point is the paid piper of what you're doing. So again, here's what I know. No one's going to go print money for you. No one's going to lower your interest rates for you. No one's going to decrease the cost of, a loaf of bread or the cost of gas as a general statement. You say, no. In 2 years, when, the next president, the Republican steps in, is that really the reality? And do you have the capacity to wait for 2 years? Most likely not, by the way, even if it changed in 2 years. And it'll seem magical in 2 years because traditionally, except for the longest, the second longest trough in U.S. history was from 2008 or 7, let's just say 7, to basically 2012. That's the longest trough since 1939. What a lot of people don't know when we say the Great Depression, we think about the Black Tuesday, right? In 1929, where all heck broke loose. That depression, why it's called the Great Depression, just as some of you may not know this, it was 10 years. From 1929 to 1939, the Great Depression was there. Well, what they will say, from Napoleon Hill to the Earl Nightingales to the Jim Rohns and to all of these guys and gals who believe that was their moment of opportunity and success, in that 10-year period of time, more millionaires and billionaires were made in that decade of the Great Depression than any other time in U.S. history. So the question then comes down to is, what are you going to control during this recession / depression? And it's funny because we always have to wait for the government to tell us which one we're in. And yet, unless you're oblivious, we are for sure in a recession. And we are in a borderline depression if things continue to go down the path that they're going. Now, what I always say is a recession is when your friend has lost their job. A depression is when you've lost your job too. So just give perspective to what's going on. And I just want to say one last thing with employment. And you say, gosh, George, why are you? Because I want you to wake up to what you need to be doing. In the last 7 days, 20% of all of Apple, of the employees of Apple were reduced. The Apple phone new Apple phone stopped production, probably because there's no different from the last one. But the reality is no one was buying it. So they stopped production on the latest and greatest Apple phone, and they reduced their employment by 20%. So did Microsoft, 20%. So this is what's crazy. So did Amazon. Now, when you start looking at the fact of all of this reduction in employment in what you consider the S&P 500, the greatest companies in the world, Tesla reducing employment, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. I was sent this article out, and some of you will get this. It's kind of a kick, but someone said to me, actually, it was a good friend. I sent this article out to a handful of people that I was reading. I didn't realize it said it in there. And they sent back, they said, well, there's major problems in the economy if OnlyFans.com, which do not go there because that's a porn site, is laid off more than half of their staff. So, I mean, my point is, I just want you to think about that. Everywhere you turn right now, like I talked about the University of Utah, there is employment issues going on. And so, look, great business people are going to make changes. That's what they have to do to be profitable. You have to make changes. So you may not have to terminate anybody. You might need to refine your team and make sure the right people are on your team. But as a general rule, you may have an assistant or two, maybe even have 3 of them. Okay, great. Maybe you have to make some adjustments. But beyond that, the real adjustments are the habits and the disciplines, the rituals, the patterns that you've created in your life over these next 2 years. The reason why I look at someone like Jessica Terry is that she didn't change the patterns. Even during COVID, she'd be like at work every single day. Every single day she was participating. Every single day she was prospecting. So why is there no changes for her economically? Not that she's not aware of them, but recognizing she has to pivot, she has to change, she has to evolve in a different way to make it happen. That's what great leaders do. And so what I'm watching when I see a 50% reduction in sales in October of 2022, 50% in the state of Utah right now. And that happened like that. And people are coming like, well, what's wrong? What's wrong is this. What's wrong is what are the patterns, disciplines, and rituals of your life? And if you're still living in the patterns, rituals, and disciplines of COVID, and sitting on a rock, meditating, acting like, I meditate every single day, every day. But I don't sit and wait and sit on my rock or on my couch waiting for business to happen. So the question then comes down to what patterns, what rituals, what disciplines are you going to change so that you don't get caught into the fact that you're one of the statistics. Here's my quote. Here's my Babe Ruth call out, home run shot. July of next year, which is basically 8 months away. July of next year, 25% of the realtors will not be renewing their licenses with the board of or their board dues with the board of realtors. They will be gone and done, 25% of them, because that was all the skimmers. That was all the people. It was money for nothing, right? The MTV song, money for nothing, chicks for free. That's what they were doing. They were just waiting for business, waiting for money to come in because it was so easy. So then the question I go back to, what patterns, disciplines, rituals are you going to change? So I just want to propose 3 of them in the time that we have left. Number 1, and I have to tell you, I was with my son who recently got his license. I said, if you will master these 3 things and you will do these 3 things before 12 noon every single day, everything you want to come true in this business will come true. He's 20 years old. He just today sent me a text. He just set his second listing appointment with an expired. The second appointment ever in his life that he's ever set. And it was an expired. My point to you is you have to do what's necessary to do the business in today's market. You have to pivot. You have to be versatile. You cannot get stuck in your old ways. You have to wake up and recognize that I am in control. I can change the course. I can change my future, but it is up to me. Not up to the market, not up to the rates, not up to the president, not up to our governor, not up to the politicians, not up to anybody but you. All right? Number one, before 12 noon, number one, participate. Participate. I was at the morning meeting this morning at 7:30. I look around and I'm all, where is everybody? And you say, well, wait, I'm home. Why? And we say, no, look, I get some of you may have responsibilities with children. I get it. But how fast are you getting yourself in here to participate? There is something special about the environment of Everest. The thing that I always love is that anyone from out of state, when I have people who want to come see what we do and why we do what we do, they come walking into the hallways and they'll walk down with me in the hallways of Everest, and they'll say, well, what's the special occasion? Nothing. We've just decided that we're going to work. Now, here's the second point, which may seem obvious. I want to weave all these together. I want to give you the 3 points and let's talk about them for just a minute. Number one is participate. Number two is to prospect. Number two is to prospect. And number three is to exercise. All right. So when I say participate, for me, that means to practice my mindset, my skills, my disciplines, what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, what I'm seeing, who I'm spending my time with. Get your mind right, because it happens within the way in which you participate. All right. Prospecting. I walk in on Saturday morning. Now, again, this goes for the people. Like, I know there are people on this call right now, guys, who are hemorrhaging economically. I can see the names. I know some of you are. And you're hemorrhaging. So I come in on Saturday morning. I'm meeting with my mentor, Tom Lloyd, who built all these glass buildings that are all the one we stand in, all these. I'm meeting with him. I meet with him for 4 hours on Saturday morning. Now, some of you may say, oh, I'm not doing that on Saturday. Well, I know that, because when I drove into the parking lot, which is funny because today I said part of this story, and the agent's car who was in his car, I thought it was just someone who was just in the parking lot sitting in their car doing whatever. Anyway, I walk in, there is literally my car in the parking lot at 9 a.m. There is Tom Lloyd's car in the parking lot, and this black car way out in the middle of the parking lot. 3 cars. And yet 532 agents in this company, and 50% of them did not close a single deal in the last 30 days. Where are they? Where are they? Where are you? You may say, well, I had a commitment. Well, a commitment for what? Have you woken up to what this market's really doing, and the requirement of not waiting for business to happen, but going out and getting the business to happen? And my point to you is, no. Do you need to work every Saturday? No. But what I do know is that if you were prospecting and you were talking to your sphere, you were calling expires for sell by owners, just listed, just sold, internet leads, whatever source you want to go after, I don't care. And what if every Saturday morning you went out and knocked on a handful of doors? Now, some of you are like, oh my gosh, I thought this was going to be motivating. You mean you're telling me the market's crashing, 2-year recession at least, and now you're telling me I need to prospect and participate and be at 7:30 meetings and work on a Saturday morning on the mornings that you can? Well, yes, that's what I'm saying. If you are not making enough money right now, you better wake up to the fact that you have got to find more clientele that can buy or sell a property in today's marketplace. And if you are not prospecting enough, you are going to be one of the statistics to this game we call real estate, meaning not the good statistics, the bad ones, the ones who didn't make it, the ones who didn't renew their license, the one that didn't pay their board dues, the ones that's borrowing money, the one that is not succeeding. But if you will participate, if you will prospect, and last, if you will exercise your physical body with either, cardio or weights or some sport that you love to play, get out and start moving and do things that get you connected to yourself, get you to breathe hard, get you to get exercise so that you can fill your mind with the positive endorphins that happen from it. Look, on my board, I'm going to show this to you. I'm going to turn my screen. You see all that writing over there, gang? That was Saturday morning sitting with my son, and this is how I open it up. You want to earn $1 million a year? This is how you do it. And some of you have settled into the idea that it's okay to earn 100 grand, 200 grand, 500 grand, 600 grand, 800 grand, whatever the number is. But what I know is the only way that you get the success that you want is you create immense structure to your life. And if you don't put better structure into your life, the market just dropped by 50% in the month of October across the Wasatch Front. 50%. That means if you were doing 20, you're now going to do 10 based on market conditions, unless you practice and participate, prospect and exercise, and get it done by 12 noon. So next week, you can imagine I'm going to be pretty fired up at the summit. So if you're easily offended, you may not want to be there, because I'm going to talk to you for about 45 minutes about getting your freaking act together. And in the sense of, like, you may say, well, wait, George, I do have to. Then great. Then still, the market is going to impact you no matter how good you are. What structure are you going to put in place to ensure and to guarantee that you're going to win the game of real estate moving forward? If rates are going to go up, markets are going to drop, values are going to decline, you may say, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive? Well, you're going to survive fine. Just like I always say, people are going to die, people are going to divorce, people are going to get married, people are going to buy their first home, job transfers, promotions will occur, job loss will occur, investments will occur. There'll be homes to sell and homes to buy. Just the question is, if you don't put the right structure in place, even when there is transitioning markets like this, if you don't get serious about your structure of your day, your schedule, and the refinement of it, you are going to sit back and go, I don't know what happened. What's happened? What has happened is the market shifted and you didn't. Now, look, in closing, the patterns, the disciplines, and the way in which you've run your business to this point, Halloween Day, has probably been just okay for the last couple of years. Now, could we all have had more structure? Oh, certainly. Could we have all been a little more disciplined? I'm sure we could have. Could we all have implemented more structure of disciplines in regards to our prospecting, our participation through practice of mindset and skills, and the exercise that we have? Of course we could have. But now it's not just, hey, that would have been nice to make a little bit more money. For some of you on this call, and there's quite a few of you now, it's not just a, hey, it would be nice. It is a necessity and an absolute must. You have to fix the problem. You have to pivot your disciplines on a daily basis to become what you desire. And remember, these are beautiful moments to see what your character is, to see what your disciplines are, to see the character of your discipline and to who you are capable of being. And look, there's only really 3 types of people. There's people who get paralyzed in these moments. They go, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I get really paralyzed. Oh, and they just like sit down or put their head in the sand like an ostrich and think, well, there are no problems. There are no problems. What do you mean there's problems? You can fix them, but there's problems. You have solutions, they'll fix them. Or the second person, right, is the person who runs. Oh my gosh, I better go get another job. I better go do something different. Okay, you can do that. You can run from their problems. I'd ask you this, where else does that show up? Does it show up in your intimate relationships if you run all the time? Does it show up in your hardest moments? Do you run all the time? I'm telling you, how you choose to answer out of this market or into this market, it's a description of how you live your life. You when times are tough, you get paralyzed. Well, if the times are tough in this business, you're going to get paralyzed. If you want to run, you can run. You probably run in other areas of your life. Or the third person is the person who stands up and fights and says, you know what? Not me. I'm not going down. I'm not changing my lifestyle. I'm not changing my approach in regards to the life that I have built. I'm going to change the other parts of so I can continue down this pathway, but I'm not changing the fact that I'm going to have the money, the wealth, the income. I will change my approach to it, my habits, my rituals, my disciplines, but I am not going to back down. And gang, if I could just echo to you over and over again, there is nothing about this business you can't do. There is nothing you can't learn. So just go for it. Go see what's possible in this business. And here's the beauty. When markets are doing this, The requirement is extraordinary leadership. When sellers are petrified, when buyers are unknowingly knowing what's going to go on in the future. And I could spend more time with you, but okay, I have to do this. Just two fundamentals if you're writing them down. Number one, this is an interesting statement. I say interesting because I want you to think about it. Number one, I must believe that homes are still selling. That's the first critical point. But here's the second critical point. I must believe that it is a wise decision to still buy or sell a house. Where I am finding so many agents get screwed up in their mindset is they either believe homes aren't really going to sell anymore for them, and number two, they have come up with the conclusion of, well, I don't know if I would buy right now. How could I tell someone else to buy right now? Well, would I sell right now? I mean, if I wouldn't sell right now, or I wish I would have sold back then. So what do you believe? Because how you speak and what you believe is critical. Now ask yourself, is it a good time to buy a home? Well, what if home prices do go down? What if they do? Is it a good time? What's better? Not being at home? Is it better to be in their own home for their family, their memories, their stability for their children, to get them into the right schools? Is it better for them to buy a home because they could actually just refinance? Is it reality that if you take the last 100 years that home values have all gone up? What about you and others who bought their home in 2005? The height of the real estate market in 2005. 3 years later, the market has completely crashed and burnt to the ground. Those same people's homes are worth now 40+% more than that day. You have to believe it is a good time to buy, or you will speak as a weak mouse in the game of real estate. And you have to believe that homes are selling. And if you believe homes are selling and you believe that you can get the job done and you believe that it's a good time to buy or to sell, you will speak with authority and confidence. You're not trying to trick anybody. If it's not a good thing for them, then you tell them that. But some of you have bought into the idea home prices are going down. So how about this? Does that mean that if home prices are going down, that just a year ago, the people you sold or helped people buy homes for or sold their homes for, did you screw them over? Just think about that. Did you screw over the people 6 months ago that bought a home? It is always a good time to buy a home. The answer is no, you didn't. They get the tax benefits. They have stability in their life. And the most sure asset and guaranteed future for value is the game of real estate. Now, if they're going to buy a home and sell it 12 months later, probably not a wise decision. But if they're going to be in that home more than 5 years, it's an extraordinary decision. So remember, I got to believe homes are selling, but I also got to believe that it's a good time to buy or sell a home. I have to believe that to be effective out in the market. And if you don't believe that, then come talk to me. Show up at a base camp, show up at a morning meeting, and let's talk about it, because it's an extraordinary time to buy or to sell. And unless they're going to be buying and selling over a 12-month period of time, then get after it and believe homes are selling, believe it's a good time to sell, fix some of the patterns and the disciplines of your life, and watch what will happen for you in this market. For you individually, there will not be any problems for you in this market if you'll do the right stuff. If you don't do the right things in today's market, you will be one of the statistics that I will talk about that didn't make it, didn't renew their license, or didn't pay their board dues. That is the pathway of 25% of the agents out in this marketplace. So again, don't focus on what you can't control. Be aware of it. Now, how do I respond to it? And how you respond to it will be the most important part of your career to date, because there are some rough waters ahead for the next 2 years. But you better get serious. And people thought I had lost my mind in May when I started shrinking the offices, consolidating our environments. People thought, you've lost your mind, George. Did I? Did I lose my mind? The market just dropped in the last 30 days by 50%. And it was May when people thought I was crazy. Crazy. So just remember, I'm calling this right now. If you don't change your disciplines, your patterns, and your rituals, and you don't get aligned with what it takes to sell real estate today, and if you don't get clear on participating, prospecting, and exercise, you're going to have major problems. And if you somehow don't control your thinking and figure out that homes are selling and that it is a good time to buy or sell, and that you find the reasons why it is, you are going to struggle at levels that you'll probably put yourself out of this business. Do not be that person. You have control, you have a bright future, and everything will be extraordinary if you anticipate and execute appropriately. Anticipate, execute. Anticipate, execute. You anticipate a tough market, execute at a higher level so it all comes together. Guys, I know it seems like it's a little intense, and it probably is, because I am baffled by watching so many agents have so many challenges and so much disappointment, and who are struggling at such high levels. They don't need to be. They don't need to be. That doesn't need to be you. So I invite you, get to the morning meetings. I'll be there tomorrow morning, 7:30. If you can't be there, jump on Zoom. Get yourself aligned mentally, emotionally, and then physically get out there and discipline yourself to making the contacts, talking to the people, and doing the things that are necessary in today's marketplace. All right, guys, have an extraordinary rest of the week. And so for some of you, you don't know this, maybe some of you do, but of course, you know what? We're so excited about what the future holds, right? You've seen some of the consolidations. You've seen some of the partnerships I've been creating. A good example of this is I just created a partnership in California where I am not the majority owner in California anymore. Why? Because I have pivoted, because I know what is needed. I know what is needed. I know that I needed to make sure I aligned the company with other people so that it was there for the years to come. That's what we do if we're aware. So you don't sit in the mire of the problems, but you go and you fix the problems, and you align yourself with new strategies, right? You change your strategies and you anticipate and you execute. That's how you win the game. All right, guys. Thank you for being on the call. Guys, just go for it. There is not one part of this you can't do. Pivot and participate so we can get through this thing. As we get through all this, every one of you will set yourself up for the rest of your lives. Remember, more millionaires made, more billionaires made during 1929 to 1939. I'm just talking about maybe a couple of years of some tough moments. Let's make sure we're in this together, and let's make sure we do some great things together. All right. Have a great rest of the week.